Okay, and Liz, you are starting us off today.
Yes. So hello, welcome to today's Global Conversations, Multiplier Effect of Immigrants and Refugees. I'm Liz Van Arkel. I'm an immigration attorney here with Dentons Davis Brown and a board member of the Iowa International Center. On behalf of both organizations, I want to thank you for attending today. Dentons Davis Brown is pleased to sponsor today's discussion. In our daily work with immigrants and refugees, we see the challenges individuals experience when they move to the United States. In today's discussion, we'll hear how their selfless actions, particularly the recipients of this year's Passport to Prosperity honor, change lives now and for future generations. This year's Passport to Prosperity honorees are Shaime Ali from Egypt, Parka Biswa from Bhutan, Ivania Gabriela Guerrera Ceron from El Salvador, Dr. Maria Corona from Ecuador, and Lucita Thompson from the Philippines. And just a quick reminder that we're recording today's session. Please mute your mic. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end of our conversation. Thank you again for attending today's discussion. I'm going to turn the program over to Pat Grote, our Executive Director at the Iowa International Center.
Hello, and thank you, Liz, and thank you all for joining us. We are really grateful for the role Dentons Davis Brown plays in supporting new Iowans and for their firm sponsorship of today's discussion. We appreciate the long relationship we've had with Dentons Davis Brown and want to recognize the firm's incredible advocacy on immigrants' behalf, both locally and nationally. I think we are ready to get started. The names of the panelists today are on your screen. Kenia Calderon Ceron is VP of Bilingual Business Development Director, and she's also a 2016 Passport to Prosperity honoree. Stephanie Moris is the Executive Director of the Refugee Alliance of Central Iowa, and Ambassador Swati Dendekar is founder and owner of 39th Street Strategies and also a 2006 Passport honoree. We are really thrilled to have all of them join us. The multiplier effect is really a phenomenon where one change in a particular case causes a larger change in output. So we might simplify it to call it the ripple effect, but it's really an exponential effect that one person in an economic, cultural, social, community situation can have grand, really great implications. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists today just to talk a little bit about, given their experiences and their roles, what the multiplier effect looks like to them. You know, what change can one individual make, and what are those long-term effects, and what does it have? What change can it make in a larger community? And Cassie, we're going to go to the speaker view. That's great. Okay. Kenia, let's start with you. Let's talk about that multiplier effect. What kind of things do you see? What does it look like from the chair you sit in?
Yes, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me just fine? Not too loud, not too soft? Okay, perfect. The multiplier effect, I would say, I noticed it even with my own self. So when I became a 2016 Passport to Prosperity, at that time and still today, I was a DACA recipient, right? And so just thinking about the impact that this award has on the community, it really brings representation of our community front and center, right? And so, I've noticed that because we're able to put leaders, immigrant and refugee leaders, in front and center in our communities, that also motivates and inspires others to see what else they can do within their communities. My work, and actually very similar to the two individuals that I recommended, for the award has really been focused on the undocumented community and really focusing in and empowering and extending access to undocumented folks in our state. And so just seeing how we've done great work together, the three of us, especially Dr. Maria and Gabby, and just it makes me really excited to see what else will be done after our time too, and just the future leaders that will even be future Passport to Prosperity honorees too.
That's great. Thanks, Kenya. Stephanie, you have a different perspective from as an executive director of the Refugee Alliance. What does that multiplier effect look like to you?
Yeah, within refugee resettlement, the effect that especially those initial greetings or those initial interactions that refugees have when they first come to this country can make lifelong impact. When people first arrive, especially children, they're coming to this country for the first time. They're seeing Iowa, our city, a lot of times our infrastructure here and our communities, and they're interacting with Americans, for the very first time. And I hear regularly from those that have been here, a short time and those that have been here for years, very specific instances that they have, especially within their first, few months in Iowa, whether it be in the education systems, in their employment, just the massive, impact really that those initial interactions have on their feeling of welcome, on their feeling that they're able to do their jobs, that they're able that they have the support that they need in schools. And so, just those initial kind of first impressions can then go on and really, make lifelong impact. So, the small interaction that someone might have as like a school counselor or the bilingual family liaisons, or someone from any of the religious entities that exist in central Iowa, or especially like the case management staff within the resettlement agencies. The little things that they do even really, go on to make an impression, especially on those younger generations that are then, I hear about regularly, as adults or even now as third generation. So, whether that be an influence in someone's future career path, or just the overall feeling that they have being welcomed in this community at all. It makes, it can make a really, really big difference and for a lot of people. So yeah, just little interactions that you have that might not seem like a big deal to you can make a lifelong impact on a lot of families here in central Iowa.
Thanks, Stephanie. Ambassador Dendekar, you have an even broader worldview as your role as a former legislator and a former ambassador. Can you talk about what that multiplier effect looks from the chair you sit in?
Yeah, thank you, Pat, and thank you, Liz. I'm really honored to be here today. When people talk about multiplier effect to me, they usually look at me as a person who came as an immigrant to United States. I came from India on, I tell people, in beautiful coat and sandals. When I boarded the plane, it was 98 degrees in Mumbai, India, or Bombay, that's what they used to call, and landed in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where it was a wind chill factor -10 below zero. And everybody said to me, Arvin's friends who saw me said, oh goodness, we'll have to teach her a lot. And I think they did a wonderful job of teaching me a lot. And Suki's cell was one of them. So to me, multiplier effect, I tell when the immigrants and refugees come and ask me, how come you are where you are? And could you please tell us about your multiplier effect? So I tell them that you have decided to come to Iowa now, be part of this community. The multiplier effect helps you in, it doesn't happen overnight for you as an immigrant or refugee. You have to develop trust. You have to establish your integrity, whatever you're doing, doesn't matter what the work is. And then you have to be authentic with and sincere of what you're doing. I remind everybody, I was not born a House representative. I was not born a senator. I was senator. I was not a commissioner of Iowa Utilities Board. I started my life as a mom and a person who is stubborn and caring of other people and fought for kids who could not afford a tutor in sciences. And because that's my background. And when I did my volunteer work, one of the things I said, I will tutor kids who cannot afford a private tutor. So your multiplier, my multiplier started as a person who just cares for her community. That doesn't mean I didn't have people who were not, most of the people were kind, some people were not, but I learned to ignore that. And that's what I tell my friends, my immigrant friends and my refugee friends. And remember that, just don't ignore it, remember it. But I told them people are not so good or very good in every culture. And we just have to focus on our goodness and bring that to life to let other people see. And so that's what I have worked on. And I always tell people that it is your work, it's your advocacy, it's your caring for your people, and it can be anything. You know your own strengths, and that's how you approach it. And it has helped me in my life. And I think that has given me this path of people calling me, they'd call me either ambassador or senator or state representative, whatever they want to, or they call me Swati, and that's fine too.
Thank you. I'm always impressed when I talk to honorees, current or past, the selflessness that all of the honorees portray. And I think that's the beginning of that multiplier effect. I think Harka called it, it makes my life beautiful. That's the way he put it. And I was really touched by that comment. Stephanie, you know Harka Biswal, one of our current honorees. I'm wondering if you talked about people touching in those early interactions and then going Harka. Are there some specific instances with either him or some of the other people that you run across of that multiplier effect, that one act that created another act and improved somebody else's life?
Sure. With a lot of our community members, you often hear, particularly students, who will talk about, just different kind of happenstance meetings, or like they went on a tour, or just like a random speaker, or just kind of these random events that happen where, kind of right place, right time, and they hear about something that may not have been within their radar originally, that really inspire them and just really change, the whole course of their education and career. And having previous conversations with Harka about that, I would say that it's not limited to him, but with so many of our communities, it's just I couldn't share enough stories, I think, about really, like, especially within those initial months, you know, when somebody first starts a job, or when someone is meeting with like a career pathways coordinator, or when people are getting enrolled for school, or when they're coming back and talking to the different support staff they have, just like how big of an effect that those people that are really seen as kind of figures of authority in those areas, you know, can have, whether it's you know, somebody at school being dismissive about a need that you know, maybe someone's having trouble expressing, or you know, someone really kind of developing like a mentor relationship, or seeing you know, people at their school doing things that they, you know, maybe didn't think that they were eligible for or qualified for before, but now are excited and motivated, and you know, discovering new passions in different fields. You know, I think that this happens like daily all around us. And I think that, again, just really the, you know, the massive impact people can have without knowing it, you know, every day in your life, the people that you come across, especially, you know, with a lot of the people that are at their most volatile, or when they're the, you know, they're most vulnerable, you know, the lifelong impact that can have is so huge. I mean, our current state bureau chief of the Bureau of Refugee Services came into this country as a refugee when he was just a little boy. And I think that, you know, that's just kind of a testament too, right, of being able to come in and, you know, seeing these processes and meeting with these officials and seeing these kind of professionals, and how that shapes your career path. And again, you know, we have tens of thousands of refugees in central Iowa that really, I mean, those daily interactions that you have that might seem so small or so unimportant to you, you know, really make a big impact. So we hear about it just all the time. I mean, a random phone call that we might have taken like a Christmas Eve 2 years ago, and a housing emergency, and just, you know, now that person is involved in a housing rights organization, and you know, just again, innumerable examples. But yeah, I hope people take away that the really big impact and the really big impression they can have on people.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's right, Stephanie. Kenya, one of the things I heard Gabby say was she's talking about seeing people who are like her, and how important that was in what she does, and her impact on people. Can you talk about some of those instances? You also talked about Dr. Maria Corona too. Can you talk about some specific instances, or no, I'll just let you take it from there.
Awesome. Yes. And when Stephanie was speaking about just like the people that have the impact, right? Both of them have had great impact in my life for very different reasons. So Gabby and I are cousins. So we both came to this country. We were undocumented for a very long time. We're both DACA recipients, and we're the oldest of our family. And so while our personalities could not be any more different, because we're very, very different, our goals were the same. And so we were in it together at a young age as high schoolers, who lacked a legal status at the time, who didn't know if we were going to go to college. I don't know that either of us would be where we're at today without each other's support, because it's important for our immigrant and refugee communities to have individuals that understand what they've gone through, what they're going through, without having to do a ton of explanation. And I think that's key, because I feel like I've met so many different people in my life that want to understand and they want to be there for me, but it's hard because they don't have that background. Like, I still appreciate the effort, but it really does make a difference when you have someone next to you that lives it every day and that's telling you that it's possible, and that you will get out of the survival mode. And so that's the impact that Ivania, I call her Gabby, has had on my life, and that she continues to have on other people's lives, especially with her work with the Iowa queer communities of color. So just bringing that, right, the same type of support to other individuals in our community has been super important. With Dr. Maria, and I are very similar. So her and I have the same character, the same type of approach to problem solving. And I met her when I was 21, recently had turned 21. We were doing a leadership program together. And her and I have a similar immigration background as well. And I remember meeting her, and I think she might have been in her late 20s, so there was an age difference. And I saw her as a woman that was an immigrant herself, that was at the time trying to earn her master's degree. And while she's doing all of these great things, she's still very vocal about the injustices that were taking place in our community. And I remember looking at her as a 21-year-old and thinking, I want to be just like her someday. I want to be unapologetically myself, and I want to unapologetically advocate for my community. And her and I built a great friendship because of this program. And so going back to the representation and how important it is to be in these spaces, I was looking up to Dr. Maria when I was younger, and I still continue to do so. And maybe now, because of our age and our professions, now it's more of a friendship versus a mentorship type of relationship, but it's so impactful to have individuals that understand your background, understand why you make certain decisions, but at the same time that can make you believe that things can be different and that you can be your true authentic self, when it's really hard to do so when you're an immigrant and a refugee, and you think that the only way that you will be successful is by assimilating and by changing who you are. We have individuals that show you that you can still be successful just by being you.
And that's really important. I think that by being you and being successful, that is kind of a key that Gabby talked about, your authentic self, her authentic self. And that's a pretty powerful statement. Swati, I know you're good friends with Lucita. She's got an incredible story. And the work that she does in the community now, I mean, she can trace right back to I think she called it the little grocery store that her parents had back in the Philippines. And she talks about homelessness and food and things like that. And what do you see? I mean, can you talk about some other things that she's done and the impact that she's had?
Yes. And so we call her Donna, and most of the people call Luisa Donna. So she, as you know, she herself has gone through a lot in her life. And she and I met because of Asian Latino Coalition. You know, that's a big coalition. And now she and we are working on Iowa Unity Coalition. It's a coalition where it's a broad-based coalition. It's a coalition of not just Asians or just Latinos. It's every immigrants, every refugees from their walks of life can come to Iowa Unity Coalition. And one of our goals, one of them, is to remind Iowans that we are here. We are here and we look at ourselves as Iowans like they do. We may look different, we may talk different, but we have same dreams like our neighbors do, and that's who we are. So Luisa and I have worked on all these goals, and ours is more political because the Iowa Unity Coalition is also political. We endorse progressive candidates that are aware of our presence. When I say "our," that means people of different walks of lives are in Iowa, and we want them to know that we are here. And that includes DACA kids, kids who are like kids who are like me, who came here with a green card on day one. So makes a big difference, but we are all in it together. And Luisa is our treasurer. And I have to tell you that she is the most dedicated person I have ever met in my life. Not only she knows how to do her numbers, she is so talented. I just attended her wedding last weekend, and she had done all the decorations herself. So she's talented, she's a very caring person. And to her advocacy of refugees, and of course, hers is more of Asian American background because that's where she started. Everybody has their own niche, and that's what she does. And she always makes sure that people who call her for help, she's always there. And she's extremely talented. And I became her friend because of this one story. And this is a story I'll talk about me and how Sam Bakam and Kim Pom, we all became friends. When I was state representative, and this is a story what others are talking about, your presence makes such a big difference. When I walked up the steps, there were a group of people like Sam Bakam, Luisa was not there, and Kim Pom, they were waiting for me to come to the top. And when I came there with my son, I was with my son, they asked me to sign this bill. And I said, I have not even read the bill. What is this bill about? And they said, this bill is about having an Asian American commission. And what Stephanie said is right, you have to show your presence. And I said, can I at least read a bill? And I remember Sam Bakam and Kim Pom telling me, it's one pager. It should not take you more than 5 minutes to read it. So read it and sign it. And I did. And the story is, this is for people. I tell my refugee friends, and Stephanie and Kenia, all of you, please ask them to be at the table. The reason I'm telling this story, if the refugees, the immigrants, we are not at the table, it is very easy for people to forget you or ignore you. And the reason is, going back to my story, this bill was to form in Iowa Human Rights Commission to also have Asian American Commission. So before I signed on that bill with then Representative Jody Tymason, that bill languished in Iowa House for 30 years, maybe more, 20, 25 years, maybe the 30 years is too much, or a long, long time. And people would vote it down. It wouldn't even come out of subcommittees. But when I signed it, it passed 99 to nothing. The reason is, I tell my friends, the reason you have to be at the table is because how do you look in your colleague's eye and tell her or him, we don't care for your culture? And Luisa understands that. And she makes sure that the Filipinos and Asian, as you see in her background, she makes sure that they are at the table. And I tell that to everyone, please be at the table, go and vote, ask questions, do advocacy, doesn't matter what it is, but do that. And not only it passed the House, it passed the Senate, and Governor Vilsack signed it. So we, the immigrants, the refugees, and the well-wishers like you, all of you, like Liz and Pat, we all have to be at the table. And when we show up in strength, we win. They cannot ignore us, or they cannot act as if we are not here. So that's what I tell. And Luisa took that advice of mine to her heart. and is not only now working for Asian Americans, but she's working for other organization. And I have to tell you, she is fabulous. And I have not seen a woman of her talents and her energy anywhere in my life. So when Sanjita Pradhan asked me if I would write her recommendation, I said, I don't need any background and I'll go ahead and do it. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
She is fabulous. And your comments really bring us to where I'd love for the conversation to go next. And that's really about the future. You know, what can we do now? What should we look for? We have all sorts of societal pressures on us, economic pressures on us, health pressures on us now. They have, in many cases, hit the immigrant and refugee population much more than they have hit Caucasian, white America, Iowans. What does the future hold? How can we make that multiplier effect even bigger? What kind of support do we need? Where do we go with that? And Swati, I'm gonna throw it right back at you. I mean, and that inspirational be at the table statement really fits right into what do we do for the future?
Well, I really think that that we have to take time to explain to our refugee friends or our immigrant friends the importance of being at the table. And they have so many other things in their lives they have to face. It's not simple. They, you know, when you look at refugees, they have to get used to the new culture. They have to get used to it because I did. But I didn't have to worry from a socioeconomic point of view. I had my husband there with a good job. And my job was to just adjust to different culture. And you don't have, I tell people, you have to respect each other's culture. That's, I'm not saying assimilation, I'm not saying forget your culture. I'm saying United States or Iowa is a great state because of its diverse culture. I think if we all take to heart to talk to our refugees who can vote, should vote, talk to our refugees about the issues they are facing, in sense, if there are any, how to contact the school board member. I think I have noticed they are comfortable with the local elected official, because I was one local official. And even today, I get phone call and I get their things done. And then I have to remind them that I'm not senator anymore. I'm not a House representative anymore. And that's okay. But I make a point of connecting them to right people and they get comfortable. They are bright, they're intelligent. It's just they do not have that confidence of picking that phone up. I think it's easy for them to pick up the phone and call me because I think they look at me as if I look like them. So they just call me and I try to help them as much as possible. But to me, that we should tell them that they should not worry about what if others say no to them. And I told them, so if they say no, we'll go to somebody else. It's okay, it's just a no. And that's, like this one young man said, you sound so much like my mom. And I said, I am of your mom's age. So I will sound like your mom. So I think it is important not to, for Stephanie and for Kenia and for Liz and for you, all of you and your organization to not be political. I'm not saying be political, but tell them how they can become powerful. And I always give them example how Irish became powerful community, because they realized that if you are political and if you are at the table, you become a powerful community. And it is important we do that for refugees and for immigrants. I don't know whether I answered your question or not.
That's great. I think woven in that, one of the things that I understand when people would call you is that it comes back to trust. I think that's one of those things.
And yeah, and authenticity. When they truly feel that, and there are times we have not been successful, and I feel sorry, but they'll say, no, we did our best. They become my support system. It's very interesting. They will call me back and they'll say, you're okay, right? I know we didn't accomplish what we wanted, but you're okay because you sounded it. They should be worried about them, whatever the issue is, but usually they're so caring, they call me back.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Stephanie, we're going to be seeing a whole bunch more refugees in the next few months, all different kinds of refugees. Some that have been in refugee camps for years, others who are special SIVs, special international visa, right? Immigrant visas, that's it, sorry. Thank you, Liz. I can see you nodding. I appreciate that confirmation. So there's a future there, what's it gonna take? Where's that one spot or a couple spots that we can build on?
Yeah, that's a big question, but I think that, Harka is a really good example. Harka and his organization have been established for years, and Harka and a lot of the leaders within the Bhutanese community here in central Iowa, have really carried tens of thousands almost, or more than 10,000 individuals and family members really on their shoulders through every possible just basic need that you can imagine, right? So reading mail, anytime they get notification from USCIS about their immigration process, they need someone to interpret that. If you get a notice to appear and you don't read English and you have no idea what it says and you don't appear, that can have drastic, massive consequences for you and your family. Enrolling for school, applying for jobs. If you're going to apply for a job online and you don't have a computer and you don't have internet and you don't read or write in English and you can't fill out the English application, how are you going to do that? It doesn't mean that you're not, wouldn't be amazing at that job and that you're not the most qualified candidate in some of those cases, but just access, right? So, especially over the past year, our refugee and immigrant communities have carried the state through a pandemic. Our food systems, our manufacturing systems, the entire state economy really has been carried through this pandemic while these communities have been deemed essential workers and pretty much kind of sacrificed to COVID. We've GoFunded me funerals. I mean, just things that a lot of these community leaders should never have had to do. So moving forward, these organizations like Harka's, which is the Bhutanese community in Iowa, they received funding for the first time, and it's definitely, no one's getting paid, on their board or on their staff. It's still very much volunteer run, but they received funding for a program that they applied for this past year for the first time, and they've been applying for grants for 6 years. So organizations need to be acknowledged and recognized. If we're going to have, again, we're talking probably close to 100,000 people. If these people are going to continue to carry our state's economy through this pandemic, and contribute in innumerable ways, right? Not just the entire country's food system, or the manufacturing systems or our economy or a million other ways, right? If they're gonna continue to be expected to do that, I think the least we could do is acknowledge the organizations. There's 26 ethnic community-based nonprofits that work in central Iowa that serve and do all of these direct services. So acknowledging those organizations, seeing that those organizations get the funding that they need, people who are interpreting and translating for any of these like very important things, whether it be employment, health, mental health, all of these different fields, those interpreters and translators need to be paid. The direct service providers that do all of these things voluntarily. We've just had so many times over the past year where emergency housing, we had a community leader who was 8 months pregnant in a high-risk pregnancy, driving around trying to find toilet paper and tampons for a family that had just experienced a housing crisis. And just things like that. All of these community leaders, really their time and their energy deserve recognition, and they really should be paid for their work, because a lot of the hours that they put in over the past year, keeping everyone together and keeping everyone safe and healthy and connected to resources, that went unpaid. A lot of these, resources in the community aren't accessible to people that don't speak English. I don't know if I called 911 the other day because there was a semi truck that was weaving in and out of traffic on the freeway. I was transferred 3 times before I got someone on the phone, and I spoke fluent English. And so if I didn't speak English, if I had a health emergency, for example, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I was struggling to breathe at home and I was having problems, that's not an option. Funding the organizations, making sure resources are accessible in all languages, those people that are doing direct services and interpretation translation, that their time is being appreciated and paid. And just, again, really, I think acknowledging the innumerable ways that these communities make our state better would be great, would be a really, really great start. Health access, mental health, that's another thing too, that interpretation translation piece, just availability of resources, making sure it truly is accessible by all communities. It's a lot of psychotherapists won't take on refugee or immigrant or non-English speaking, I should say, clients because they can't get interpretation paid for. There's a lot of systems that interpretation, translation, or access piece for resources is a really big deal. The community leaders themselves, like Harka, and there's just, dozens of other people really, that are responsible for carrying these communities through. And then just, the organizations funding themselves, but also just the recognition and appreciation for truly, the immense, weight they've carried on their shoulders over the past 18 months, and that they always do. Just recognition, appreciation for those that are actually doing this really hard work on a day-to-day basis, and that people's time and skills are paid when they should be. And hopefully these agencies like BCI continue to get more funding and continue to be recognized, so that they can continue to do all of these services and expand them, and be compensated for their time in the process too.
There's a lot of work to do. Thank you, Stephanie. Kenya, I'm wondering if you have some additional words on the future.
Yes. So for me, I see the refugee and immigrant community as our present, right? So this is a community that we cannot continue to ignore. We can't continue to look at trends and to say we need to do something because the future is coming and they're really going to be becoming the majority, right? Because in reality, that's already happening in our state. Our towns, cities are being, as Stephanie mentioned, are being supported and built by refugees and immigrants. So from my perspective, there's a huge need for more corporate responsibility, because I am a huge advocate of my nonprofits. I love my nonprofits and the work that they do every single day, but they can't carry the weight of the work by themselves. So we need more for-profit organizations to look at the disparities that exist in our communities and to do something about eliminating these disparities among refugees and immigrants, because for-profit organizations benefit from more refugees and immigrants coming to our state. They are the consumers. They are the users of the products and services. And so for me, That's the type of work that I'm doing here at GreenState. So we have committed to closing the racial homeownership gap in the next 10 years. Personally, I'm working to compete with payday lenders because I know the cycle that our immigrant and refugees get into when they can't access loans or just credit from a traditional financial institution. So I'm trying to compete with them. So similar to what I'm doing here at GreenState, there are so many other corporation for-profit organizations that have the power and the resources to also address the disparities that exist in our communities. So it shouldn't just be nonprofits. It shouldn't just be community leaders that on top of their full-time jobs, that they're doing so much work to be able to take care of their community. It really should be everyone that resides in our state to see this as a priority and to put resources to improving the lives of immigrant refugees in Iowa.
Thank you. Again, I have to say there's a lot of work to do then. We need to all stand up and stay at the table. Liz, I just want to give you a minute or so or two. As an immigration attorney, you have a little bit different perspective even on that multiplier effect. I'm wondering if you can make just a comment or two about that.
Sure. Yeah. And thanks everyone for your stories. I'm loving it. So some of the things that I see on a daily basis, I don't think the rest of the community is oblivious to. So, you know, I think there's a lot of misconceptions with immigration and, you know, what the next steps are, and the simple fact that our system is not easy at all. It's very hard to understand. It's evolving all the time. So, you know, not only is my main focus to get families together and to have people stay there, it's also to, you know, regenerate our economy. You know, just last week I was talking to an immigrant student and, you know, the creator of the Diaper Genie about this new project that they have. And, you know, without this immigrant's idea, this new rollout project that will probably be worth millions will never happen. You know, at the same token, I helped a same-sex couple immigrate to the United States so that, you know, the immigrant partner could be with his spouse. And that wouldn't, number one, would never happen in his country. It wouldn't be accepted, the country that he's from. But also that family now has adopted foster children in Iowa. So, you know, if you explain that to someone, no, they're not just coming here to get a green card or to stay. They're giving back to the community. They're creating, you know, these powerful connections, and they are, you know, raising our Iowa children. So, I mean, that was one of the coolest things for me to see.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Are there any questions? I don't see any in the chat, but I'm wondering if there are any questions that someone might have.
I see Dina has a question.
Dina does. Thank you.
Yeah. She said, what would your advice be to find someone who can support an immigrant in all many ways that you described? If someone hadn't met a mentor or friend, where can they find one? Where can they find that support?
Anybody want to take that?
I think this is Swati Dendekar. I think mentor friend just happens. I think in my view, again, you don't go and look for a friend. You just run into a friend. It would happen even in your country you are living. Say, I came from India, right? You don't go looking for a friend. You just, you are doing some things, good things with the community, and you end up, again, it's the ripple effect you are talking about. When you are doing things for the community, you find people of you know, like, for example, if I run into Stephanie or Kenia, most probably we'll end up becoming good friends because we have advocacy. We may not agree on every policy from a political point of view, or even from a food point of view. She may say, I don't like cheese and I like cheese, or something like that. But these kind of things happen when you are working on your advocacy, or something that is near and dear to your heart, and you do end up meeting people who become your lifelong friends. And I ended up getting mentors who did not look like me. And it's okay. I tell that people were saying I didn't have, it's kind of interesting. All my mentors are men. So those things do happen, but it would have been wonderful to have a female mentor. But now more and more women are getting into world of politics. So you end up getting mentors. And for me, I always, when young women call me and ask me if I could be their mentor, I always say yes to them, because that was something that was lacking when I was in world of politics.
So mentors can be everywhere.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you. We have another question. How can everyday Iowans support an immigrant or refugee?
Hey, Pat, I wanted to throw in
Yeah.
there.
Oh, sure.
Hey, I was just going to say, for refugee resettlement anyways, specifically, well, first, just the ECBOs that I was talking about, they oftentimes, a lot of these communities have events where they're open to the community. So we always try to post, and obviously with COVID, things have been very different, but normally, within each of these organizations, there are different celebrations and festivals for food, and Independence Days abroad, and Martyrs Days, and religious celebrations that are very much open to the community. And the community at large is invited and encouraged to participate, and showing up to support those communities and being present. I think constantly I hear, how big of an impact that truly makes. We have, and then of course, we have like World Refugee Day in June. That's just a very large free event for the community that's put on by and for refugees. So yeah, just showing up, being present, allowing people to see that they are supported, that they are welcomed. But I also wanted to make sure to mention, especially with the potential influx of Afghan SIVs over the next few months, our resettlement agencies, we keep just trying to encourage people to help them wherever they can as well. A lot of people like to give donations, which is amazing, but like a lot of the bigger things like beds and cribs and mattresses and car seats, a lot of times when you flee, you're, if you're in a van, you're not packing car seats. And a lot of times people leave in the spur of the moment and aren't able to even bring documentation. So just, that those funds are open. I know that they're always looking for volunteers as well. They have match programs too, where like a business even, or like a church or a group or a family can kind of like adopt a family that's moving, so they're able to help cover the expense, because when they arrive, they have to have everything in the house ready to go. They beds and couches and tables and chairs, all the pots and pans and dishes and linens and clothes and shoes and school supplies. So both, there's 3 resettlement agencies in Iowa. And all 3 definitely need support, especially, we're going to be we were already looking at a presidential determination of probably over 100,000 for this upcoming year. And those, that was going to be managed by resettlement agencies across the nation that had been defunded for 4 years. So we have a lot to do, and our, the staff had been cut pretty much in half, kind of across the board. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways, and again, I'm speaking very specifically on this, kind of on behalf of the resettlement, the direct refugee resettlement side of things, but showing up for the communities and showing that they're supported and they're welcomed. And then of course, the influx of the upcoming refugee resettlement, and of course the additional SIV cases that the state of Iowa will end up receiving. Both are all three agencies really could use our help.
Right. Thank you. So Andy is asking if Iowa International Center can do anything to support resettling agencies. And I don't know if that was just to us, Andy, but you know, we try to support our agents, the resettlement agencies as much as we can. A lot of times in those first 90 days, especially, we talk about, we are just supporting. And after 90 days, we often offer translation and interpretation services. We have a couple of hotlines, both for emergency personnel, so that it can serve those people who are in need of emergency care. We have a housing hotline that is open to landlords and renters. So we has, as you can imagine, seen a huge uptick in the last 2 years. And Stephanie, thank you. We do also hire interpreters and translators, and we are always looking for more. So those are some of the ways that we look to do it. We're also always looking at, you know, somebody, if we like to put it for our friend, from our friends in our newsletters as well, to help support in those ways too. And I think advocacy and education is also really important, and we try to take a role in that as well. So unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank all of our panelists again, Stephanie, Kenia, Swati. Thank you for spending time with us today and for sharing some of your opinions and some of the expertise that you have. Just as a reminder for everyone, this is Passport to Prosperity Week, and we have events and engagements all week. And we will be honoring Shaima Ali, Harka Biswa, Gabby Guerrero Ceron, Dr. Maria Corona, Lucita Thompson, and we'll be highlighting them in a virtual ceremony on Saturday night. And we'll also be recognizing the Harkin Institute for their work internationally and with us, walking with us to provide services along the way. Before I turn it back to Liz, I do want to thank you all for attending, and I want to thank Liz and Denton's Davis Brown for sponsoring today's event. We really appreciate your support in all sorts of ways. Liz, I'm going to let you wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you all so much for attending today, and to our great panelists. I certainly enjoyed everything, and I love hearing the stories and just, you know, leaving today being inspired. So no matter how anyone comes to Iowa, we're happy that they're here. They're an integral part of our society. And, you know, I look forward to continuing to build our community with all of you and continuing to expand that multiplier effect. So on behalf of Denton's Davis Brown and the Iowa International Center, thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.